Welcome back to the Python series where I'm looking at writing Python code that operates through Metatrader for trading, and this is the third part in the backtesting sub-series. So if you have seen the earlier part, I said that I had some untidy code which was working, but I really wanted to fix it, and it's here in the strategy class, and I wanted to get rid of this code that is only operating in the case of tests, because I think when you write your strategy you should be able to write it without worrying about that. So I'm going to be fixing that today, but I've also realized that there are some smaller things that I've been putting off, thinking that I would deal with all the big items first, but as I'm doing that the smaller things are becoming more troublesome. So I'm going to deal with a number of minor items first before I get on to actually fixing the strategy here. Now the first minor thing that I'm going to fix is Metatrader itself. You can see that I've already made a copy here. This is backtesting part 3, and so far it is just a copy of backtesting part 2. So let me put that out of the way. I have the MA cross, which is the main Python file, then the strategy file, MA cross strategy, and custom backtesting that I've written to put a wrapper around the backtesting classes so that I can add more features there. So if I look at Metatrader, I can just right click on Metatrader 5 here and go to definition. And you can see that it's opened up this init py. I've got all of these constants declared in this file, and then there are 4 functions. There's raw order, close, buy, and sell. But all of the other functions that you see with the interface and all of the functions that are actually defined in the documentation come from this from._core import asterisk, and this is a C module. So I can't go into that and look at it any further, but that has all of the main functions that you need. Now if I look at the 4 functions that are in this file, they don't seem to be full featured. Let me give an example. Here in the buy, for example, there is no option to set a stop loss or a take profit, and there is no option for a magic number anywhere. So it's almost like these are here as example code, and so I'm going to treat it like that. What I'm going to do is create my own functions instead of their buy and sell, and this raw order, it's fine for setting up the order structure, but then it goes on to actually place the order, and I think that should be in a different function. Anyway, I'm going to override this. Now to override it, I've created another folder here called modules at the same level as classes, so it's underneath my backtesting folder, and I've created a file in there called custom_metatrader.py. All I'm going to do here is just say from Metatrader 5 import asterisk, and without doing anything else, that will give me all of the functions that are available in Metatrader 5, and I can go back to my MA cross, and instead of import Metatrader 5, I can change that to import modules.custom_metatrader as MT5. Because it's a wrapper and it imports everything, there's nothing more that I need to do to implement that, and it now leaves me free to go into this custom Metatrader and write new functions. I'm just going to do that through the other files. Now in my custom Metatrader, I'm not going to create a buy and sell method. I generally don't use those. I would prefer to have a single method that is to open a position and tell it whether the position is a buy or a sell. So I'm going to create an open position function, and here it is. I'm passing in the type, which is going to be the buy or sell, the symbol, volume, price, which defaults to none, stop loss, take profit, deviation, magic, and an optional comment. I'm stealing some of the code structure from the Metatrader examples. So if price is not none, which means you've supplied a price, then I'm going to create a request by a call to a yet-to-write function called request. And if that returns none, then I can just return here because something's gone wrong. Otherwise, I'm going to return order_send, and this is the internal Metatrader function. The editor is showing this as an error because it can't work out where this is coming from, but it will work at runtime. And if no price is supplied, then I'm going to create the default price, and to do that I'm having a multiple retry here. I'm trying 10 times, building up the request again, passing in, let me make that none. So by passing in none, the request function will actually calculate the current price. And again, if I get none back from this, then I'll continue, and loop through for the remainder of the retries. And in fact, I'll add just here, I will add a retries here. So you can actually specify the number of retries if you want to. So loops through, does the same sort of thing. Builds up the request, sends the request. If nothing comes back as the response, then I'll return because something's gone horribly wrong. And if the response is not a requote and it's not a price off, then it means that I've got either an error or a success, and so I can just return that response. If it's either of these two codes, then it means I just need to reset the price and try again, which is why I've got the retries there. Okay, so that's the open position. The request function there, I need to write that. So in the request function, all the usual arguments being passed in. This is where I say if the price is none, then I need to get the current system price. So price info, symbol info, tick symbol. If price is none, or if the price info is none, then we've had a failure. If not, then I'll get either the ask or the bid price, depending whether I'm buying or selling. And if price is none, then I simply set this trade price equals price. I'm using a different variable here, trade underscore price, just so that I don't accidentally reset this if it's been called with the value for price. And then request, deal, symbol, volume, type, trade price, stop loss, take profit, magic, and deviation. And here I add the comment if it's not none. Now, I did have a call to the set filling mode, which I don't need now, so I simply commented that out. But if you want that, here is the set filling mode that I've used earlier. I will be replacing this in the future, but this will work for now if you want to use it. So with that, I have enough to place an order if I supply the information there. From the last video, you'll also remember that inside the strategy, I have a call to get the number of open positions. I'm going to move that out of the strategy and put it in here because I think it's really a Metatrader type function. So get position count, symbol, type, and magic, and they're all optional. So if there is no symbol supplied, then I get all positions. If there is, then I'll use the argument symbol equals symbol for that call to positions get. That gets me a list of the positions. If position is none, return 0, there are no positions. And if it's not none, then I apply a filter depending on type or magic being none or a supplied value. And then I just return the number of positions that were counted. There's another function I'm going to add in here because I frequently will ask for a list of prices from Metatrader and then convert it to a data frame. So here I have the get rates frame, symbol, time frame, start, count. And this simply uses copy rates from POS with the same arguments, but then returns none if there is none in response. Otherwise, it will convert it to a data frame. It will rename the columns to mixed case, convert the time column to an internal date time format, and we'll set that as the index and return rates frame. And I can see here I have an error on PD. I need to import pandas into this file. So that takes care of almost all of the changes I'm going to make for Metatrader today. Let me go on to something else for a moment. Here in MA Cross, I am going to add back configuration. I took it out earlier because I didn't want to worry too much about it. Now I'm going to put it back. I'm not going to be as complex as allowing you to have multiple configurations. It will have just one for the time being. So here is my very simple configuration file. Testing mode, true or false. Cycle time, 10 seconds. And the parameters for the strategy itself, I've got a symbol, a time frame, and a magic number. So far I'm not including things like the moving average periods in here. I can get to that later, but I've set these things anyway. Now I need something to be able to load that configuration file. So I've created a new file, util.py, inside this modules folder. and I need a load config method. So you'll pass in a path to the load config. It will find the base path, which is based on that I'm running MA cross pi. You'll get a configuration path then by appending that. Open the configuration file, read it. If there's a file error, returns none. It will attempt to parse that file, and this will convert the config.json file into dot notation. And if there's a JSON error, then I'll print that and return none as well. So then back in the macross.py, I can create this config variable calling util.load. I need to add in util. So import modules.util as util. So util.load config, and the file's just called config.json. You can see it here. If that comes back as none, which means I've had one of those errors, then I'll just quit. I can't go any further. And then instead of these hard-coded values, I can begin to replace those. So testing can be config.testing, cycle time can be config.cycle. Symbol was placed inside the parameters because I see those as parameters to the actual strategy. And now I'm down to time frame. If you noticed here in the config, I've set time frame h1 as a string. Inside this config file, I don't have access to the enums inside Metatrader, so I don't have access to timeframe underscore h1, and to get the value of that, it's actually an integer. So what I've done is coded it here as a string, so it's human readable, and you can set this h1, m1, m5, m15, as long as they're valid values. But then when I get here, I need to convert that value into an actual integer. So I have another function I'm going to put into the custom Metatrader. So remembering that custom Metatrader has access to everything in Metatrader 5, which means that it has all of these time frame values. What I want to do is build up a mapping so that I can relate the string m1 to this time frame underscore m1 and m2 to time frame underscore m2. So first, right at the beginning of this file, I'm going to create that mapping. I'm calling it underscore timeframe underscore mapping, and I'm just basically going through all of the names that begin with timeframe underscore and putting them into an array. And now I'm just going to create a function that will turn that string, h1, m1, d1, whatever, into the value of the appropriate enum. So I'm calling it timeframe underscore value. You pass in the name, h1, and it will simply look up the mapping that's been done and get the value from the matching name. So then I can finish out these constant values with timeframe now equals the MT5.timeframe underscore value, config params timeframe, and the magic number is just config params magic. There is something else that I've been skipping all through this, and it's not so important here on my demonstration machine because I only have one copy of Metatrader installed. But if you have multiple copies and you simply call initialize like this, Metatrader will attempt to find a copy of Metatrader to open and run, but it may not get the copy that you're looking for, which could mean that you begin trading on a different account. So it's important to put the path name in here and some other information. I'm going to go back to the config, and I've added an element here, mt underscore path, and the value is the complete path to the terminal 64.exe file. And note that I've replaced the backslashes here with forward slashes so that they don't become escape characters. And this works fine, just using the forward slash. So this is the path to the Metatrader instance that I want to open. I can put the MT path there, and then in this MT5 initialize, I can add MT underscore path. I'm also going to add here portable equals true. The default is false. I always run my Metatrader in a portable mode, so I've just added that. There are other arguments you can add in here for login, password, and so on. I'm going to use the default login that I've already set on this instance of Metatrader, but if you want to log in as something else, then you can do that. And next, because I've created that get rates frame, I don't need all of this code to get the copy rates from POS, convert to a data frame. This is all inside that function already. So now I can just MT5 get rates frame, symbol, time frame, 0, 1000. And finally, I'm going to take this log function. It's been sitting around here, not used by very much. I'm going to take that out and put it into the util file as well. I don't need to do anything more with it other than add date time. And then back in the MA cross, there are only two places where I was using log, and I'll just change that to util.log. And that takes care of the simple fixes. So now I can get on to actually repairing or updating this strategy to get rid of this dirty code here. Now I want to clean up these conditions in here where the strategy knows if it's in testing mode or not. I think that should be unnecessary in most cases. But before I do that, I'm just going to modify these tests. I was looking at a strategy for a crossover, but so that the trades will happen more quickly, I'm going to just change this, and it will buy as soon as the fast MA is above the slow, or sell if the fast MA is below the slow. It won't wait for a crossover. So all I've done is remove the second check to see that we've done a cross. Now I can begin updating custom backtesting to include more of the features so that I don't need to worry about testing in the specific class. I'm going to need another import. So this is also from backtesting._util. I'm importing _data. I want to remove the need for this function to set the live params. So to begin with, I'm going to change the arguments on the constructor here. So I'm adding testing, which defaults to true, and a cycle, which defaults to 10. That won't hurt if you're running in a test mode because these are named arguments, and if you don't use them, then you don't use them. So first thing I'll do is capture those two values into class values. I still have this test for if data is none. Can't hurt to have that there whether in test or not test mode, and it will just set up that default data frame, and then the super init after that. Set live params is not needed. If you're wondering what's going to happen with symbol and time frame, I'll take care of those later. I've changed this name to just testing, and now I need to rearrange a bit of code here. I'm going to change this from strategy to CustomStrategy, but I'm also going to move it up. And I've moved it up there because you've seen that I've removed self.symbol, but when I get finished with this, the strategy will have the symbol. So I can change this check to use strategy.symbol now. I'm also going to remove the set live params from the strategy, so I can get rid of that. And to mainly handle this, this piece of untidy code where I had to recalculate these things, I'm adding a call to another function that I'm going to put into the parent strategy class. So strategy recalculate _indicators. So that's the extent of my changes to the backtest class in strategy now. I haven't used it so far, but it's possible to pass parameters into strategy. And so I'm going to use that to pass in the symbol, the time frame, and the magic number. But within CustomStrategy in the superclass, there is a check on these parameters to make sure that they exist as class level variables. So before I can pass them in, I actually need to create those class variables. So I'm putting these statements before I call super init, which means that when these params with symbol, time frame, magic, and testing come through, super init will agree that they are class level variables and will let them go. It will also take care of assigning the values from the params to these, if you're wondering why I haven't bothered to put any values in here. And then I need one more, which is going to be used to handle this recalculate indicators. And that's just a flag that I'm going to be using to tell me if I've already calculated things or not. And of course I don't need this now because testing is going to be passed in as one of the arguments. I don't need the set live params. Here I'm going to remove open position from this class because, as I said, that's not the place for it. I've already put it inside Metatrader or inside my Metatrader wrapper. So this is going to be my new call, MT5.openPosition, the type, symbol, size, stop loss, take profit, and the magic number. Need to add one more thing here. You'll see that the default for stop loss and take profit is none if someone calls this buy function, and you will be calling this buy function because that's the default function to call from within the tester and the backtester. So if you want the same code to work in backtesting and live, you're still going to call buy or sell. But if you don't pass in a stop loss and take profit, the default is none, which is going to cause a problem later for Metatrader because it would expect these to be 0 rather than none. So I'm simply checking if stop loss is none, it becomes 0, and if take profit is none, it also becomes 0. I do the same thing for the sell method, and if you're trying to keep up, all of this code will be available I'll leave a link in the description of the video where you can find the web page. You'll be able to download all of the code from there. The open position has been moved to Metatrader, so it has the get request and the set filling mode. I have no need for a get rates from POS because I now have that data frame that I can get. I'm just going to rename that as get position count and call the Metatrader 5 function. So still, if I'm in testing mode, this is as it was before, but if not, then I'll let the Metatrader wrapper handle that. Now the recalculate indicators method, which is called way back up here by the backtest class. Where did I put that? There it is. I need to put that inside the strategy. So recalculate indicators, if it's in a testing mode and it's already been calculated. So I need to calculate these values at least once. If they have been calculated and we're in testing mode, then I don't need to go through recalculate each time, and I'll just return. And that's done. If it's not in a testing mode, but it hasn't been already calculated, then I get the data with the get rates frame, and I make self._data equal to this underscore data. So I included that above, and you've seen that earlier. It was embedded in the MA cross strategy. I haven't removed it yet, but there it is. So now I'm doing that inside the parent class of the strategy. So I don't need to put it inside every subclass. So then down at this point, I'm calling calculate underscore indicators, and that does need to be specific to the strategy. And then I simply set that is calculated to true. So calculate indicators needs to go inside this MA cross strategy. I can also get rid of all of this code and I can create one new function in here, calculate indicators. These are the same statements you saw above, so there's nothing new there. I have added this self._indicators.clear. So the strategy parent class actually stores an array of all of the indicators that are set up. If I simply call this self.I in a live mode on every tick or even on every bar, it keeps adding to that collection, and eventually you'll just run out of memory. So I use this clear, and then I'm basically repopulating them. In a testing mode, it doesn't really hurt. It's already empty the first time through, and I'm just setting these values once. In a live mode, I'm clearing it and recalling each time to recalculate those, because the indicators typically change on every tick in a live mode. I will keep looking for better ways to do this, but at the moment this works. And I've got this poor old SMA still hanging around. I'll get rid of that soon, but not today. I think we're almost there. If I come back though to the main call here, I did say I've added some arguments to the CustomBacktest, and I've added some extra parameters to the strategy itself, so I can modify the creation of the test. I've added testing equals testing, cycle equals cycle, and that's simple enough. And I don't need to set live params now, but I did say that I needed to pass arguments into the strategy itself. So I'm passing in testing because the strategy still needs to know that I'm testing even though it's here. I could have simply fed that through from the backtest, but I decided it was easier to pass it into the strategy here. Symbol, time frame, and magic. And as I said, you can add things like the moving average periods. I just haven't done it yet. And I think that should be everything. I will run this and see if I find any errors. And if there are no errors, then at least we should see it execute a trade. Okay, I got an error config.json not found, and that's because I put the file in the wrong place. I had it up in the root instead of inside this backtesting part 3. Another error. Looks like I forgot to change this get open trade count to position count as well. Change there and change there. Right, so that ran through. I'm in testing mode, so the test has completed. If I go back and change config, and also note this is a lowercase in false here because this is inside a JSON file, not inside a Python file. So now that is set to false, I should run in live mode Here is something important that I forgot. Get rates frame. Let me go to that statement. If not self.testing, get rates frame, that's the function we've already seen, symbol time frame, beginning with number 0 for self.depth. Now, I need to set that inside MA_strategy. This is where I have the two moving average periods. It's only inside this strategy that I know how many bars of data I need to be able to get a value for these two variables. So I could be using an RSI, I could be using an ATR or a MACD, it doesn't matter what I'm using. It's only inside this function that I know how many bars of data I need. So I'm going to add another variable here. And just as I did before, I'm going to add these two together and then add 3. That should be plenty of data for me to get these moving averages. So now let's try again. I have a buy trade. I can see that although it looks like we're starting to head down, the fast moving average yellow is above the slow moving average blue, so it's done the right thing. We just wait a minute and see if the lines cross and we can get a sell trade as well. I can see now the moving average crossed underneath, and we also now have a sell trade. So that's all working. Just stop that running. And that's all I have for you today. As I said, I will put this code on the web page for you to download, and there will be a link in the description of this video where you can find the web page. If this has been useful to you, then please click the like button because that helps the channel. And if you want to see more of these videos, click subscribe and then click the bell icon if you want to be notified when more videos are released. Thank you for watching.